Open.
Bienvenidos to Cafecito with HPPR, where we sip coffee, share stories, and celebrate the impact of parks and recreation in our communities. Grab your cafecito and join us for inspiring conversations on leadership, culture, and career growth. Let's build connections one sip at a time.
Good evening. Welcome to Cafecito with HPPR, episode number 10. Here, Cafecito with HPPR, when we sip coffee and talk how park and recreation shape Hispanic communities. And today we have with us the great Jesus Aguirre. Jesus, welcome to Cafecito with HPPR.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's so good to be with you.
Jesus Aguirre, Jesus, for those few that may not know who Jesus is within this world, Jesus is the director of the City of Park and Recreation Department with the City of Austin, Texas, the capital, and is the immediately past chair of the NRPA board, uh, term that he served for about 5 years, if I have it correctly, or
As
so.
chair, 2 years as chair, but I've been on the board for about 10 years now.
There you go. There you go. Has been a
Yeah.
faculty member with NRPA Director School, Supervisor School, and on other nonprofit work, and been a great influential on the Hispanic community. He's also one of the advisors of advisory board of HPPR, and has been a great ally with this group for since our inception in 2022. So again, welcome. It's an honor to have you here on the show.
Thanks so much. It's an honor to be here.
So Jesus, we have coffee in
Mm,
hand. See his mug here. I have my mug here from Universal Studios, drinking
Nice.
coffee at night. So this is a cafecito conversation, and the first question that we have for you is a very basic and common one.
Mhm.
What is your go-to coffee? Are you a coffee lover, or are you more of a tea person? What do you drink?
I drink coffee. I drink a lot of coffee all day long. And I enjoy a good dark cup of coffee, any kind, but I'm also not a coffee snob. I will drink any kind of coffee, whether it's from that's been sitting out all day or either on my desk or at the coffee machine. I just enjoy coffee in general.
Black coffee, or with and you just get it up with
Black
milk?
coffee. Yeah, just
That's
black
me.
coffee.
That's me.
Yeah.
Black strong coffee. That's yeah,
Yeah.
that's me too. So maybe not the entire day, but usually more in the morning. Definitely black, strong coffee. All right, Jesus. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How we would like to get you know as a person. What is your background in terms of
Mhm.
how you ended up park recreation, any childhood memory or something that? How do you get connected initially with this profession?
Sure. Well, I'm not sort of the traditional Parks and Recreation person. I kind of feel like I stumbled into Parks and Recreation. My first career, I've been lucky to have had two careers. My first career was in education. So my first job right out of college was a middle school science teacher in South Central Los Angeles. I was into education. I've been fortunate enough to work at every level of the public K-12 education system. So I was a teacher. My wife and I founded and ran a dual language immersion charter school, public charter school. So worked at the school district, excuse me, at the school as a principal, and then at the school district level in Washington, D.C., where I saw oversaw school operations. And then finally, I worked as the state superintendent of education for the District of Columbia, so I had oversight over all the schools. But when I was in Washington D.C., the Parks and Recreation Department at the time was pretty was struggling, was having some challenges operationally and legally and contractually and with human resources and all of that. And it was an election year, and as we all know, parks and recreation are really important during election cycles. And so the mayor asked me to step in and help stabilize the department. I was working on operations. The department needed operational support, so he asked me to step in as the director. And I'd never really thought about working in parks and recreation up until then. But of course, when the mayor somebody asks you to do that, you step up, and I did. And a couple things happened. Most importantly, I really fell in love with the work. I got to know the department really, really well, and really felt motivated and inspired by. We had about 500 parks and rec professionals in Washington D.C. that would get up every day to serve community, and they did it in really challenging situation. Right, everybody was beating up on them, the elected officials, the community members, each other. They were having a really tough time, and I was just inspired by, in spite of those challenges, they just kept wanting to do the work. And then the second thing that happened was the mayor didn't get reelected. Well, there's three things that happened. The mayor didn't get reelected, so I was sort of kind of in limbo. But the other piece that I just thought of that I haven't really shared this probably with anybody, so this is sort of the first time I share this publicly. But one of the reasons I agreed to take on the role was the mayor had originally nominated a Latina woman to serve as Parks and Recreation director in Washington D.C. And she was a friend, someone that I had worked with at the school district. She's amazing, brilliant woman, just not no nonsense, nonstop, really hard worker. Um, but it was very political, and in the end she did not get confirmed, and I was truly disappointed by our city council at the time, because this was a Latina woman, would have been the first Latina, as a director there. And so part of the reason I agreed to throw my name in the ring as well is because I wanted to sort of push the council to confirm another Latino, and luckily I was successful. But yeah, so that's sort of how it happened, and that mayor didn't get reelected. So I have a whole lot of mayor stories. So that mayor didn't get reelected. The next mayor asked me to stick around and continue the work in Parks and Recreation, and that was an honor. But then that mayor didn't get reelected. And that's when I started sort of to look around, and that's when I got a call from Seattle, and had never been to Seattle before, and went out there to just meet people and get to know the city, and I was asked to take over that department. And so it's sort of kind of how I got introduced to Parks and Recreation. A lot of stories.
A lot of stuff, a lot of stuff. Like, and
Yeah.
get into some of the stuff that I wanted to ask you in terms of pivotal moments and,
Hmm.
and your trajectory. One of the things that you may or may not know, but I have shared with some people. I mean, you are truly one of the most influential persons over the last few years within the park and recreation field, particularly within the Hispanic Latino community, and certainly a staple of reference since APPR's inception. Uh,
Mm.
I was inspired in 2023 in Atlanta when you had the courage to address the audience in Spanish,
Mm.
coming into the stage and unapologetically just show pride on your roots and address the audience in Spanish. And that actually inspired me. That was actually in Dallas, not in Atlanta. In
Right,
Dallas,
right,
and then in Atlanta, I submitted and presented a session
right.
totally in Spanish, in part inspired by that courage that you showed. But so talk to me a little bit about leadership in park recreation. What do you think are key components, or how you define the leadership that is needed in park recreation, particularly from a Hispanic leader?
Yeah, no, thank you, and thank you for those nice words. And I do remember that conference in Dallas, and it was really inspiring to be able to just share a little bit of my story there. And of course, a
Sure.
big part of my story, a big part of who I am is I'm a Latino, and I'm an immigrant. I was born in Mexico, and I'm really proud of that. But to your question about leadership, I think particularly in Parks and Recreation, I think leadership exists at all levels. And those of us who've been able to work in large Parks and Recreation, or in any Parks and Recreation organization, that leadership is each and every day on the front line, and all the way across at every level. And I think for me, our work is so critical and so important that true leadership is about collaboration. It's about understanding all the things that help your community be successful, and being willing to do all of those things. So really, it's about being advocates. It's about looking for opportunities to just impact in a positive way our communities, and you do that at every level, and in different ways.
Is there any challenges that other than the political that you already kind of introduced us to, but
Yeah.
have you have any challenges through your journey and your career that you have had to overcome, and how have you overcome them?
Sure. I think. Well, I'll say that I've been incredibly, incredibly fortunate in my career. I've had so many opportunities, and I think that for me, challenges are just that. They're opportunities, and being able to be willing to jump in when those opportunities are presented. So, for example, I never would have thought about working at the school district level in Washington, D.C. until I got a phone call from somebody, and I said, sure, I'll try it, because I believed that I had something to offer. Then when the mayor asked me to step in and help the Parks and Recreation Department, I stepped in and agreed to do it. And so all of those were challenges that I was worried that who am I? Why? What makes me think that I could step in and do those things? And that whole, we often have that imposter syndrome that many
Right.
of us in our communities have. But you kind of have to work through that and be willing and ready to make mistakes. When I stepped into the Department of Parks and Recreation, I did not pretend to know everything. In fact, I knew that I knew very little about the work, and I was surrounded by people who knew a lot of the work. But then I also did the work to educate myself. That's when I got involved in NRPA, right? I quickly called up the CEO at the time and tried to get involved there. And I went to director school myself, and I started going to conferences and started to think about how I could have the Parks and Recreation Department in Washington D.C. become accredited, because it was kind of the way I just immersed myself in that work. So lots and lots of challenges throughout my career, but I've been really lucky enough to have been able to identify those resources and sort of educate myself and figure out how to tackle those challenges. And sometimes it's hard, right? We many of these positions are political, and my when my kids were younger, they would sort of be upset when they're like, why are we moving again? And I told them, well, the reality is each city has one job, or the one I want. So if I want that job, I got to go to the next city. And that
Right.
doesn't really resonate with teenagers or preteens, but
Sure.
that's kind of the approach we had. And I've been lucky to have such an incredible supportive spouse and family. So I think we all have challenges. So I can't think of any specific ones beyond you know the daily, the monthly, the weekly, every time we come to this work.
So it's more of a balancing the kind of work that we do at the leadership role with the family and the
Yeah.
the personal balance in there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned how do you start connecting with NRPA, and definitely you
Hmm.
have been
Hmm.
very active with that. And I would like to take that introduction to that you mentioned about NRPA, because you're the current the outgoing chair. You just
Hmm.
passed the baton to
Correct.
Dr. Medeiros in this past cycle as the
Correct.
chair board. But under your leadership, along with the other board members and Christine, you started to build the NRPA strategic plan. And I know that you have had conversation with different groups, because one of the goals was to make sure that we have representation from all the groups,
Hmm.
uh, and very big on inclusion, and make sure that we're not missing any part of our audience or our membership or the people that we serve. Um, can you share anything about that plan, and what do you anticipate will be the impact of this strategic plan?
Sure. Well, the impact is going to be we're going to change the world and make it better for everybody. I mean, I say that with a smile, but I truly believe that our work is critical, and this. All of us who are engaged in this work understand that. And my fundamental belief is that there is no other industry that is as well positioned to impact communities in a positive way. Period. When you think about all the things that Parks and Recreation professionals do, it's such a broad spectrum of what we do to really support every aspect of community well-being. So when we launched into the planning for the strategic plan for NRPA, we really stepped back and sort of asked the question, right? What are the things that contribute, that create high quality parks and recreation spaces and experiences? Really did an overall systems map of all those pieces that interplay to create high quality parks and recreation spaces and programs and systems. And part of that, to your point, was identifying who all the stakeholders were, who our beneficiaries were, who were the sort of controllers of the various aspects of those systems. And so once we did that mapping, we sort of landed on a couple key things. And the first one really was about the fact that um again, communities have a wide variety of needs, and we in Parks and Recreation can hit many of those needs. And we landed on this model of the seven dimensions of well-being, right? So that it's not enough for a community to have access to physical fitness activities and support. It's not enough to have that and mental well-being, but you also need jobs. You also need academic support. You need all of the things that in those seven dimensions contribute to that. So we said, okay, well, Parks and Recreation can hit all of these, but how do you do it? So the next step was really about the systems that are into play, that come into play here. Like, what are all the different levers that you can move to improve those things? And in some cases, it's direct impact by the work we do. Others, it's influencing sort of economic development. Others, it's sort of influencing the school system and working with the school system. So it was all about all these various dimensions. So um, once we hit on the framework for the 7 dimensions and then really talked about systems change, and the next step goes back to what you've been asking about, which is really about leadership and this leadership at every level. And in my view, when I think about, for example, our parks and recreation professionals in community centers, engaging with community members, responding to their questions, to their concerns, helping kids sort of navigate that after school time during summertime a lot. Those folks are true community leaders. And so at NRPA, we said, okay, well, we're going to focus on system change. We're going to focus on getting those individual leaders in community to build the capabilities to make those systems changes. And that's where you think about advocacy and impact and all of the capabilities there. Then we really think about, well, you can't do all of this without resources. So really looking at making sure that as we drive change in those systems, where are the places where we can make the case for additional resources, durable funding, telling our story better, and making sure that everybody understands that what I believe, what many of us believe, again, is that this is the investment in parks and recreation can change lives each and every day better, more than anybody else. So convincing people for that to make those investments. And then I guess the fourth goal there is, as an organization, we're lucky at NRPA. We have over 60,000 members and all across the country, who are looking to us to make sure that not only are we providing resources and education and support, but that we're modeling the way as well. So looking at our own organizational capacity, making sure that we have the systems to communicate with our members, making sure that we honor the responsibility we have with those resources and membership dues, to make sure that we spend them responsibly and really sort of level up our game as an organization and as a staff. And the team at NRPA and Christine are just amazing. Every time I get a chance to spend any time with Christine or them, I'm always impressed and I always learn something. So all that to say is, I hadn't talked about the strategic plan in a little bit, but I get very excited thinking about it, because the reality is that's our work, and nobody in government, nobody in the work that we work of supporting communities can do it better than Parks and Recreation.
When do you expect that it will launch, officially
it,
that?
it actually has launched, and we just started implementing those 4 goals, and part of, for example, on system change, we're really focusing on youth programming and how you use that as a way to underscore the need to change all the various systems. So it's underway, and it's going to be incremental, right? So we're doing a lot of work, for example, on advocacy and continuing to NRPA has a pretty robust advocacy committee of board members and others that are really looking at how do we work at every level of government to advocate for those resources. So
So
it's started. Yeah.
One of the things that we have found on our research and our work within our organization is how the diversity is spread out across, particularly leadership within park recreation, where
Sure.
Hispanics specifically represent maybe 25% of the population in the United States. We have found that there's a lot of diversity within people of color and Hispanic and the lower levels of the scale within park and
Hmm.
recreation. But as you move up the ladder, it becomes less and less diverse.
Yeah.
The same applies, for example, of people obtaining certifications. For example, which we have done some advocacy work to get in certifications in Spanish information. But as of a couple of years, only 4% of the CPRPs were Hispanic.
Yeah.
Another 4% were Black. So there's still a lot of work to do, a lot of ground to cover there. So how do you envision the future of
Hmm.
our field, particularly from that diversity lens, and how can we, better equip Hispanic and people of colors in our field?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great question. On one level, I think just to make the case for the fact that we don't have a choice but to diversify our rank, so to speak, in Parks and Recreation is just what you said. What did you say? 25% of the country is Latino. At some point, pretty soon, more than 50% of our country will be non-native,
Right.
non-English speaking, or like English not as a first language. I'm probably messing up that particular data point, but it's in that area. So the whole idea is
Mhm.
our communities continue to change and continue to become more diverse and continue to become, more of color. So I think we don't have a choice but to make sure that our programs our spaces that we're creating reflect the needs of our community, and in order for us to do that, we have to understand those needs. And part of it is just engaging, but also part of it is making sure that our organizations look and feel like the communities that we're serving. Now that's an important thing to be focused on. But the other thing is when you think about your story and my story and other Hispanics who've been fortunate enough to be successful and to move up in these organizations, a lot of it is tremendous privilege. It's tremendous opportunity. It's sort of being able to acknowledge that, look, I am incredibly fortunate to be in the position that I am in right now. Um, but now I have to make sure that I create those opportunities for more folks as you work down, right? So starting like you all have been advocating, and we all need to focus on the frontline folks who often are our lowest paid employees, who tend to be more people of color. We have to make sure that we're supporting them and understand what it is about their career that they want to achieve and how we support them. Sometimes it's language, sometimes it's just skills development, sometimes it's just educating them about building a path to move forward. I think one of the things that I'm committed to, maybe it's because my first career was education, is just making sure that every single employee in the organizations that I've worked for, I want to make sure that they have a path for growth. So if you want to be the best gardener, you want to be the best aquatic supervisor, or you want to be director, everybody needs to have a path for growth. And as you do that, you can begin to identify the various ways to support them. But it's not there's not a secret formula to diversify a workforce. I think you have to be unapologetic about you know taking a step back and saying, well, what is our job in Parks and Recreation? First and foremost, we're public servants, right? We serve the people of the communities that we operate in, but we serve the neediest people first, because they just have not had the opportunities that many of us have had, and don't have the opportunities that many in our community members have. So if we start with that premise, then when we're making hiring decisions or discipline decisions or promotion decisions, we need to make sure that we're thoughtful about the equity that goes along to all of that. And I know that these days it's challenging to operate in our world using words like equity and diversity and inclusion and all those things, but we have to do it. And NRPA has done a really nice job of sort of leading those conversations to saying, what, it's okay to change the vocabulary, but it's not okay to change our values. And I think we have to lead with those values.
Yeah, well, that's good thought about the people in our work, and
Mhm.
definitely a lot of ground to cover, especially in this political climate on that. But I would like to
Mhm.
spend just the last few minutes talking a little bit about impact
Mhm.
that you have been able to experience. So I'm curious about if there's any particular project, any particular initiative, something that you have been involved that you can say, I'm very proud of that, about the impact on the communities I would share, whether that is in Austin or in Seattle on through NRPA. But what is one
Sure.
particular project that you can showcase as something that you're really proud about it?
Yeah. Hopefully we have time. I'm going to share two things, and one is I'm incredibly proud of all of us in Parks and Recreation during COVID. I think Parks and Recreation professionals and departments across the country really stepped up. I think, and
Mhm.
led and made the case for why our work is so important. And we were on the front line. We were doing everything that needed to be done to support our communities, both in response to, but then also in the recovery piece. And stories all over the place about how Parks and Rec stepped up, and our team. I was in Seattle at the time. Our team in Seattle was part of that, and we, I think, did an amazing job, and frankly supported lives, but also saved lives by the work that we did. That's a general part of why I'm proud of being part of Parks and Recreation these days. But the other things that I point to that I'm super proud of, and I've mentioned DC, for example. That to me is one of the things I'm most proud of, is being a part of that team that took an agency that was really in crisis with all the things that I mentioned at the beginning, and we together worked to transform that organization. We reinvented ourselves and redid our mission, our vision, our values, and focused our mission, redeveloped our organization. And then ultimately, in probably 2.5 years, we went from an organization that was having a tough time just getting our pools open, having a tough time dealing with legal issues with contracts, to becoming CAPRA accredited. And that journey to me was really impressive, and I was so proud of the team who just stepped up. And again, these were folks that were teaching me along the way, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be on the team and lead them a little bit. But really, we transformed that organization. Uh, Moving to Seattle, it was a different situation. It wasn't an organization necessarily at all in crisis, but taking this organization and implementing for the first time a parks district that hadn't been created before, and being able to make the case to the voters that this is a good model that works, and then also creating a whole new strategic vision for the department that again transformed us and realigned us around a clear mission together. So I really get excited about organizational development and strategic planning. So those are some of the examples.
Good, awesome, awesome. And then, what are some on your eyes some emerging trends of
Mm.
things that innovative things that excite you most about the future of our field or are up and coming?
Yeah, I think, of course, I should say things like AI and all of that, and I'm not going to get into that, but I mean that's important,
Right.
and we have to think about how we can use that technology in general to do better. And I guess for us, I wouldn't call it an emerging trend, but it's an emerging realization that we need to continue to focus our systems and our technology to catch up in many ways. But for me, the real trend is around continuing collaboration and continuing around systems thinking, right? We in Parks and Recreation can't do this work alone. We have to work with school districts and nonprofits and the business sector and you name it. And we have to be good at that kind of leading for
Mhm.
impact, but in a collaborative setting. And I think the systems piece, systems thinking is really challenging. It's hard to get your head around why and how you do those things. And I think that's something that we really need to focus on. So again, maybe I'm a little getting a little old and old school, and I'm not into the necessarily thinking about some of the other new and innovative things. But for me, the basics and those things are going to be really important in the next few years.
Well, my director will say things that we will never have enough money to fund all the needs that we have. So definitely,
Absolutely,
those partnerships are essential to
sure.
get the things that we're trying to accomplish. So that's
Yep.
definitely, well, there's a lot of wisdom on those words, I would say. Um, so this has been great. I would like to just take this last couple of minutes, Jesus, and thank you again for this incredible conversation. But what I would like you to leave our audience with some last message. What key message you would like for those that are listening to us, whether are new into this field or maybe more
Hmm.
seasoned veterans, but still trying to
Hmm.
find their motivation and inspiration. And what keywords can you tell them?
Yeah, I think what I would say is first and foremost, thank you and express my gratitude because these jobs are not always the easiest things to do, and I really appreciate anyone who's in public service. I want to express gratitude and appreciation and say thank you. I think the second piece is, you know, you're not alone. Like this work is really, really hard, and it's important for you to go out and make colleagues and friends in collaboration and really make sure that you're out there well taking care of yourself but looking to figure out how you help other folks out so you know you're not alone in this work. And then the last piece I guess is related to the first one, which is there is no work that's more important than this, and I genuinely mean that, and I believe that. Look, I was in education and we were educating kiddos and helping them sort of put them on the right path to in life, but we in Parks and Recreation deal with everybody from 0 to 100 or and everything in between. And our work is especially important for our communities that have been the most marginalized, so I would also ask that we don't give up on staying focused on those issues.
Standing, outstanding. Where can people find about you? If somebody wants to reach out to you after listening to this podcast or watching us on YouTube, and they have a following up question for you,
Sure.
where can I reach out to you?
Well, the first thing is they should come to Austin and visit, and
Good.
but really my email address and you can see it on the screen. It's jesus.aguirre@austintexas.gov, and I welcome any questions, any additional thoughts, any advice, any suggestions, and let's keep the conversation going.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Jesus, I appreciate again such an honor to have you here on the podcast. I want to express my gratitude to yourself as well in terms of your support to HPPR and all the Latino community and all the park recreation in general. your work definitely is noticed and is impactful, and then I am grateful to have the opportunity to know you and talk to you today. So thank you for joining us on
Thank you.
this episode number 10 of Cafecito with HPPR.
Thanks so much, Eric. It's been great talking to you and look forward to more.
All right, thank you. See you next. With this, we conclude our episode with Cafecito with HPPR. We'll invite us to follow us online, hppr.online, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. And until the next time, we'll see you later.
Thank you for joining us on this cafecito. We hope today's conversation gave you a little inspiration, connection, and community. If you want to learn more about how Hispanic professionals in park and recreation are making a difference and how you can get involved, visit us at hppr.online. Until next time, keep showing up, stay inspired, and don't forget to bring your whole self to the table. Nos vemos!